I can only speak for my world, where almost everyone has what they need. Other nations live with sickness, but over here we die from jealousy. 'Cause it makes you chase what's not meant to be chased. 'Cause you've carried it all along. It comes to steal and hide what is real. Comparison kills. I spend all night admiring pictures. They make life look perfect as they should. But you don't know the picture story, and how long it took to make it good. It makes you consider shoes you don't like. But when that shoe doesn't fit, wear what you will, despite how they feel. Comparison kills. The grass was fine till it looked greener on the other side. Now you're believing that you fell behind. But why try to match what should be one of a kind? You're one of a kind. We all want to be successful and get mad when God's not in a rush. Oh, and if you cheat and make a copy, you realize you didn't accomplish much. Pressure gets hot, and with heat come mirages. So you think it's cool over there. Your thirst is real, but water can't feel what comparison kills. He feels what you feel, so ask God to heal what comparison kills.
Jonathan McReynolds, guys. Check him out on Spotify or wherever you get your music. I'm Liz Diddy, and it's really good to be back with you guys. Like, really good. In 2019, they did a survey. They reached out to a whole bunch of counselors and therapists, and they asked them, there's this huge anxiety problem in our culture right now. When people get anxious and they take that healthy step of going to therapy, what are they talking to you about? What are people talking to you about in their sessions? If we had the Family Feud board up here, we'd say survey says. And we'd all have our guesses, but I wonder if we would guess the number one thing, which was comparison, specifically fueled by social media. The number one thing that has people feeling anxious is comparison. Now let's remember what our definition of joy is from Dallas Willard. Joy is not a passing sensation of pleasure, but a pervasive sense of well-being that is infused with hope because of the goodness of God. And there is nothing that rocks us off of that pervasive sense of well-being like seeing God's goodness go to someone else instead of to us. Like feeling like God's goodness is so far out of reach, we can't even dare to hope for it. And that's why comparison is probably the number one resistance to joy that we will encounter in our lives. So today we're going to look at 2 ways that we compare ourselves, and also 2 habits that we can practice to cultivate a resilient joy in our lives so that we can find our way back to that center of pervasive well-being that God has already given us, that he desires for us to have the freedom to live in. So there's two ways that we primarily compare. We're usually either comparing upward or comparing downward. And what I mean by comparing upward is this. We look at someone who has more, or is more, or does better than us. We look at them and we see that they seem to be happy or they seem to be winning, and we think that maybe our joy and our happiness and the hope of our future success is tied into having what they have. We all compare upward sometimes. And even if we're too mature to do that, other people will gladly do it for us. How many of us have spent every holiday for our entire lives hearing how our younger brother is taller than us? Or hearing how our sister is funnier than us? Or our cousin has a better job than us? Comparison is an inescapable reality of our lives. And if we're stuck at the bottom of that gap, always looking upward, we start to fall into two places, and that is insecurity and jealousy. And some people think that insecurity is like some sort of moral weakness or personality flaw. Like, oh, that person's so insecure. They can't cut it here. You got to have confidence or at least fake it. You're not allowed to be insecure. But look at that word insecurity. What word is in there? Security. And I believe that the primary feeling of insecurity is actually a feeling of being unsafe. Because we know that if someone hit their sales quarter goals 3x what we did, that not only is our promotion in jeopardy, our job might be. And we know that if that person is so much better looking than us, it's likely that someone's going to swipe a different way on us versus them. We know that if that person gets just 0.03 higher than us, they are valedictorian and we are nothing. And there's real consequences in that gap. And there's a reality of scarcity and competition in the world that we live in. You know, people joke about how we just hand out participation ribbons these days, but all of us deep inside know that not everyone makes the team. And there's a fear that if we miss this, that if we lose this, we are going to lose something big. And how big that is could be real or could be imagined. But we're going to lose something big. And then when we see someone else who has that, they involuntarily become our arch nemesis. It says in 1 Samuel 18, David came back from killing Goliath. And there was a victory parade in the city, and people were singing, "Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s." And Saul got so mad. And he said, "What more can they give him but my kingdom?" Because he knew, if people think David is a mightier military leader than I am, if people give David their loyalty, that could cost me my entire kingdom. That could cost me everything. And so what did Saul do? Did he look at that gap as an opportunity for growth? Did he look at that and say, you know what, David stepped up and exercised incredible faith in the name of the living God. God, I want to have faith like that. No, it says from that day on, he kept his eye on David. And we can get so fixated on that person or on that thing. We can keep our eye on that thing when we are looking up. And when that's the thing that makes us feel like we don't have enough. The other way that we compare is comparing downward. Comparing to people who are not as good as us, who don't have as much as us. And some of us don't think that we do this, right? We are not like, oh, I'm so much higher than this other person. I'm really glad that I'm so much better than them. For the most part, I'm looking around, I don't see a lot of mean girls. Most of us don't see this in our lives. But that is largely because each of us have a giant blind spot. Each one of us are walking through our lives with an enormous blind spot because we're human. And that blind spot is our own pride. And so don't we, every once in a while, just get a little sense of pleasure when we're in a meeting and someone puts forward an idea and it's not very good. And ours is way better. And the whole room knows it. Don't we get just a little bit of pleasure when we realize that that person who always seems to show up and have everything together gets caught completely unprepared and making a huge mistake? Our pride can make us look for people who we can know that we're better than. Our pride can make us want to win so bad. And sometimes we can belittle the accomplishments of other people because they make us feel just a little bit better about ourselves. Like, sure, she has over 100,000 followers on Instagram, but I spend a lot more time with my kids. But here's the deal. Even if you are used to winning, even if you are used to holding on to the top rung of the ladder, this kind of comparison is more toxic than we realize. Because deep down, don't we know that that class that we are the smartest student in is going to end? That race that we won is going to be in the past. That whatever we did is going to become, what have you done lately? And we're no longer competing against everybody else. We're competing against the best version of ourselves. And all of those things that we accomplished and that we got, that were so celebrated, they become the level of performance that we know that we can be celebrated for, that we know that we can be loved for. And we start to hold on and white knuckle to that top bar. And we don't think if we ever let go, we will be okay again. So you can see how comparing up or comparing down is toxic to our joy. Because remember what joy is. Joy is not a passing sense of pleasure, but a pervasive sense of well-being that is infused with hope because of the goodness of God. And if we're comparing down, we might honestly feel okay. We might honestly have pleasure in our lives. We might honestly feel happy. But one day, we're not going to be able to hold on to that bar anymore. And if we're so busy creating goodness on our own, we aren't going to learn how to notice and recognize and rely on the goodness of God. If we're comparing up, we're not going to recognize that that goodness of God is not just for other people, but it's for ourselves. And whether we're comparing up or down, we are going to be anxious. Either that we aren't enough or that we're going to lose what we have. And it erodes the pervasive sense of well-being that God has already given us, that he is inviting us to again and again. The freedom of knowing exactly who we are in God. There's 2 habits that we can practice to help us cultivate a resilient joy. 2 habits that can help us find our way back to this center of well-being, even in the midst of comparison. We find these in Ecclesiastes. Solomon was on top of the world, the most successful man by the world's standards in the entire history of scriptures, portrayed to be the most successful man in the entire history of the ancient world. He built the largest temple Israel ever had. He had the most riches. Rulers from all over the world would come to see his kingdom and all of the things that he had created and all of the things that he had done. And there was no one who topped him ever. And when he looked back on everything, he saw the places that were empty. In Ecclesiastes 4, it says, "And I saw that all toil and achievement spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind." Is everything we do to catch up to someone else? We sort of joke around about this, keeping up with the Joneses. But think about it. What's the last goal you set for yourself? Why did you set it? What's that thing that you want? Why do you want it? Is it just because someone else has it? Because you want to do more than someone else has done? That's meaningless. The word in Hebrew is actually hevel. It means like vapor or smoke. It's like when you're looking up and you see this thing that you know that you have to have, that you know that if you have it, you will be safe and happy and secure forever. When I was 10 years old, that was a pair of black rollerblades with teal and purple laces. And my cousin had the ones with pink and green laces. And I just knew if I had the ones with purple and teal laces and I got to race around the block, that I would have that same smile on my face that she did. And you know what? 3 months later, my birthday, got them. Don't know where they are right now. Probably, sadly, at the bottom of an ocean somewhere. When I was in high school, I thought, if I could just get a 5.0 GPA, just get a 5.0 GPA, I will be the smartest girl in the room. Please ask me today what GPA I got in high school, because no one has asked me for a very long time. No one. It does not come up. I put it on my college application once, and that was it. And you know what? The rooms got bigger and the people got smarter. And I'm still reaching for these things, even though I've grabbed the smoke before. I've grabbed it before. I know it goes away the second I touch it, or very shortly after. I know. You know. You've done it. You've grabbed it. It goes away. And sometimes we end up grabbing for the wrong smoke altogether. My friend Michelle is a super successful CEO of a really amazing company. I'm super proud of her. She's a Stanford MBA, and her company was doing really well at one point. And they were starting to reach into new markets and making some R&D investments. And she ended up talking with someone about one of her classmates. One of her classmates who had started a company around the same time as her, and his company had just grown to 700 employees. And they were doing so well and growing so much that they were hiring more. And she looked at her company and she thought, what am I doing wrong? Why don't I have 700 employees? And so she went to her advisor and she was talking to him. And the more that she talked with him, the more that she realized that her company and her business model was incredibly healthy. And yeah, they had things that they needed to grow and things that they needed to watch out for as they were taking these new big steps. But one of the things that they did not need to do was explode their headcount. Exploding their headcount could have bankrupted their company. And so here's the thing, we look at what other people are doing, and we think that just because it's a good thing means that it's the right thing for us. But we are living a different life model than they are. And we are at a different stage of growth than they are. And we have different growth opportunities than they do. And so, yeah, I am super proud of my friend Sherry for running a triathlon, her third one this fall. It's really optimistic to say that I could do that. However, theoretically, if I put in the hours of training, I could do that. But maybe that's not where my hours need to go right now. And if I only have this one wild and precious life, where are my hours going? To someone else's dream? To someone else's good thing? Or can I recognize where I am right now? Where my growth opportunities are in a realistic way? And can I see the goodness of the season that God has me in, even if it feels dry? There's something about gratitude that takes our eyes off of the smoke, takes our eyes off of other people, and helps us to see the goodness of God right where we are. And if we can cultivate this attitude of gratitude instead of envy, then we can cultivate a resilient joy in our life. Here's an invitation to this habit. There's something called breath prayer that I want to introduce you to. It's very, very, very simple. It's a simple prayer that's usually in 2 parts. And you pray it silently as you breathe in for 4 seconds and breathe out for 4 seconds. And prayer may not be a regular part of our day, but I know all of us can find 10 seconds somewhere. And so this prayer can be a prayer that we not only can pray every day, but that we can pray in moments. And as we inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, we can pray and acknowledge that my soul can rest. And as we exhale, in your goodness. my soul can rest in your goodness. Because remember, that pervasive sense of well-being comes from the hope of the goodness of God. Let's try it together. You can pray this silently in your mind. I'll count us in and out. Ready? My soul can rest in your goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. My soul can rest in your goodness. And I would encourage you as you go through your day and you witness the goodness of God. Last night, just the way that the sun hit the leaves on the tree in our backyard, it was that golden hour, and it was magic. Whether it's the look on your kid's face or when you roll into the gas station and there's a 0 on your gas meter, but you make it to the pump. My soul can rest in your goodness. And Kim got us these really cool journals. And there's like 30 pages or so in them. And you can reflect and write and record any moments of goodness that spark joy in your life. And take time to not just be grateful in the moment, but to take the act of writing it down. Letting your hand feel the pen, feel the paper, and being able to look back on it later, because I'll tell you, I will never forget that grudge that I have against somebody, but I will forget the things that I'm grateful for. They're very easy to forget. The second practice or discipline habit that we have that we can practice is much trickier. Look with me at Ecclesiastes 4 again in verse 5 and 6. Solomon says, "Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. Better is 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind." Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves, but better is 1 handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and ceasing after the wind. And I know that we live in Silicon Valley, and I am a local girl, and I used to work in tech, and my husband still does work in tech. And one of the things that I love about our area, even though I know not everyone is in tech, this area has an incredibly diverse group of people. One of the few things that tie most of us together is our ambition and our drive. If you did not have those things, you would likely move to a place that is easier to live with a lower cost of living. Just to be here takes an incredible amount of grit. And we live in an incredibly competitive area. My husband just finished doing stack ranking for his employees, and I used to be in HR. I used to help managers do this, and we know that every single person is given a line on the spreadsheet. And so, how do we live in this place with this incredible ambition and actually slow down sometimes? We need rest over ceaseless ambition. Not rest instead of ambition. Even Solomon said, fools just fold their hands and do nothing. That's not what anyone is asking anyone to do. But he gives us this cryptic thing. He says, it's better to have 1 handful with tranquility or 1 handful with a pervasive sense of well-being than 2 hands full and chasing after the wind. How do we not do one more email at night? How do we not take the stress of our week into the weekends when we aren't technically even working? How do we take our ambition and drive, which are good things, and receive rest every once in a while, even when we don't think we are wired for rest? We will rest when we are dead. We don't sleep on the job, and we are always on the job. I asked my husband this because I told him, honey, I'm going to tell people to rest, and their first thing is going to be, must be nice, or thanks but no thanks. I asked him, he's very busy, he works very hard for our family, but at the same time, he makes time to go for runs. He makes time to spend with his friends. He makes time for us as a family. And I actually think he's a really great example of someone who balances doing very big, ambitious things at work, creating things that are pushing medical breakthroughs forward, doing things that are making our world better. And yet, he's still able to be himself, to be in nature, to be with God. And I asked him, how do you do that? What motivates you to rest even when other people are working? What takes away that fear of having someone else look better than you if they're working harder than you? And he told me that he doesn't just measure his success one way. He doesn't just measure his success by what he does at work. He also measures his success by how our family is healthy. He also measures his success with his relationships and with other goals and values that are important to him. And here's the thing, I know it's very hard to convince anyone that 2 handfuls is not as good as 1 handful. But you can hold 1 handful with a pervasive sense of well-being, with joy in your life, with success in more than one way. Or you can chase after 2 handfuls in a ceaseless rat race and not realize until too late that you are holding smoke. And rest is more than recreation. Rest is taking time to find our way back to God, to find our way back to that pervasive sense of well-being, to find our way back where we are not so busy thinking about that problem that we have to solve or that issue or that thing, that we can actually take a breath and notice the goodness of God. And so here's the invitation. It's the same breath prayer, but as you are praying this, you might feel more drawn to the word rest and what it means for you to find rest in prayer, even if it's only for 8 seconds. Let's pray this again as we inhale. My soul can rest. Exhale in your goodness. My soul can rest. Rest in your goodness. And these little journals might be something that you can record some of the boundaries that you want to make to meet some of the goals that you have. Now, these practices that cultivate joy in our lives, these habits that we can do, they're really healthy, especially once we find our way to joy and we're trying to stay there. But the truth is that joy isn't something that we can go looking for or something that our habits can produce in us. Joy is a gift of God. It is an overflow of who He is. And when we are comparing up or comparing down, we are not looking at Him. We are looking at ourselves. My kids love playing with filters on their phone. So I took a couple pictures of myself on Snapchat. And one of them looks a lot better than I normally do. And one of them, I hope, looks a lot worse than I really do. And here's the thing. We all have these filters that we put on our lives, this thing that we focus on that either makes us feel really good about ourselves or really bad about ourselves. Neither is true. And if we fixate on that thing, if we fixate on that image, we get this completely dysmorphic image of who we are. We lose track of what our identity even is. And either we are blind to the growth that God has for us, or we are so trapped in our own insecurity and feeling of unsafeness that we cannot hear God whisper his goodness or love over us. And this came to life for me this week with my daughter. And this is not just my story, it's her story as well. She very generously gave me permission to tell it. But we went to the orthodontist earlier this week because we haven't been since COVID. And she's 10, so she still has baby teeth and grown-up teeth, and they're all growing in. And so he took these pictures of her teeth and he put them up on the screen, and he blew them up and he zoomed in, and he's like drawing lines for which teeth are supposed to line up to which teeth and don't, and put this big red circle over the little gap in her cute little front teeth, and was talking about the plan that we would put together for these braces. The next morning, I found Olivia leaning over the counter in the bathroom, staring in the bathroom mirror at her teeth. She said, "Mom, my teeth are so messed up. They are crooked. Look at this gap. I need braces." And she could not take her eyes off of that little millimeter gap in her front teeth. And I'm standing behind her in the mirror, and I'm like, oh man, you guys. This triggered some really big things in me. I have wasted too much of my life looking in the mirror at the things that I don't like. And I want so much more for my daughter. My dad put me on a diet. He told me the friends of mine that were prettier than me. And I have read books, and I have intentionally chosen wording so that my daughter knows that she is not what she looks like, and she is not what she does. I prayed for this girl. I would take walks every night when I was pregnant. I might have overdone the strong woman prayers, but I'm looking at her and I'm like, Olivia, you are the girl who worked so hard to learn your times tables, and now you know them by heart. You are the girl who, when you are in the other room laughing, I can't tell it's a kid because it's such a deep belly laugh. You're the friend who always reaches your hand out. You are not that gap in your front teeth. Stop staring at it. That's not who you are. Please, 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 please do not say anything to her about her teeth or how pretty she is, please. Because in that moment, it became my story, and I realized that God has been talking over my shoulder into the mirror for a long time, and I have not been listening to him. That I am not that last mistake that I made. I am not that last goal that I didn't meet. That he carried me before I was born, that he created me and that he loves me, that I am so much more. And that if I want to lose the anxiety that I don't have enough or that I will lose what I have, I can't do that on my own. I have to give it to him. And allow him to speak love over me. Allow him to tell me who I am. And as we come to communion today, we do not receive this bread or this juice because we are worthy. We don't come to Jesus, we don't come to the cross as our best version of ourselves, because he sees right through that. And we don't only come to the cross as unworthy either, because the cross tells us that no matter how worthy or unworthy we think we are, there is humility and honor in the death of Christ, both. And that his love is what caused him to let go of the top bar of being the Prince of Heaven and come down to earth to die on the cross. That God exalted him and us with him, and that we are now part of his family. We are invited to this feast together as who we really are. All of us. Not the best version, not the worst version. Exactly us, because exactly us is exactly who God loves. Exactly who God longs to set free from the prison of comparison, to overflow his own joy, so that we can finally come back to him, to his goodness, to his love, and that there we can feel for a moment the rest of a pervasive sense of well-being, that no matter what our circumstances tell us about who we are, God has a different story. We were thoughtfully created, and we are recklessly loved. Let's come to the communion table together. You have a cup, and in your own time, you may peel back that purple layer to get the wafer, and that top layer to get the juice. Join us in this feast of God's goodness as we sing together.
Not forsaken, I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who, reflect on that as you take communion. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who my God says I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Thank you, Jesus. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Declare it. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who my God says I am. You are for me. You've never been against me, Jesus. I am who you say. I find my worth, my identity in you, Jesus. Not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say. There's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Sing that again. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yeah. Yes, I. Let that truth sink in. Let that truth sink in. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. 'Cause I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Give him praise. Yes, I am. I'm who you say I am, God. Yeah. Thank you, Jesus. God, thank you that we can find our hope in you. God, thank you that we can find our identity in you. I pray during this song that you guys can just lay it down. Realize your hope is in Jesus, not in your own merit, not in your own ambitions. Thank you, God. Thank you, Jesus.